One of my subscribers, Bruce P, suggested that I make a video on my daily practice routine, which I thought was a great idea, Bruce, so big up. So do I do this practice routine every time I'd cut? I'd be lying if I said I did. I'd be lying if I even said I had a daily practice routine anymore. But it really got me thinking about the best routine that I could possibly do if I could be asked. So without further ado, straight from the brain box, here it is. So I said this in a previous video, I can't remember which one, but it has become more and more important to me in recent times. I really feel it when I don't stretch. I especially feel it around the back of my shoulders, in my fingers, and sometimes I get a kind of a bit of tennis elbow sort of feeling. I know most of you are going to ignore this one despite what I say, but still, if this is the ideal practice routine, I have to put this in. It's better to do dynamic stretches rather than static stretches before you do any exercise, so yeah, that's what I'd recommend, some dynamic stretching. So now we've warmed up our muscles, I guess we want to sort of warm up our brain, I suppose, and kind of remind our fingers what they can do. So we're going to isolate and work our way through all the different scratches we already know. I would just focus on the basics while doing this. It's just to get a bit of flow going, so no pressure whatsoever at this point. Next thing on the list that I would do is practice without the fader at all. If your cuts don't sound good without the fader, I don't know how you're going to expect them to sound good with the fader. All it's going to do is kind of hide your mistakes, if that makes sense. And I like to try and make them sound nice and defined with lots of character. You could also practice some faster stuff, just sort of really get your record hand moving so that it will follow into the rest of the practice session. Okay, so now that we've done that, let's laser focus in on some more record control, this time with the fader. We're going to be going through all of the different scratches we know, but we're going to be moving the record from slow to fast and then from fast to slow. What this does is kind of gives us different notes, and we're going to really try and hit those notes and make them all sound nice. Without the fader, it would literally just sound like this. Here's the example with Transformers. Two click flares. You get the idea. I find that after I do this, my freestyles sound way fresher because I'm kind of putting a lot more musicality into it, essentially. Now that we're nice and warmed up, it's probably good to actually have a bit of fun and, you know, just let loose a bit. I normally just grab a looper with lots of beats and different BPMs and have a little cut over those different beats. I'd recommend the Gold Looper by Broke. All that whole series is amazing. Each one of them's got 50 different beats and they're all going from slow to fast, so it's awesome. Don't forget to mix it up with the BPMs. It's going to force you to do different combos and patterns. It might be worth practicing on your weaknesses as much as you can, because the more you do that, the quicker you're going to get better, essentially. The idea here is to do deliberate practice, not just mindless improvising. I kind of mentioned that in this video up here, so freestyling is fun, but not necessarily the best use of your time. So another thing that I like to do at this point is find a nice YouTube video of someone better than me, and I just try and mimic their flow a little bit. If they've done a Q&A type vid, then amazing. You can just jam along with them and fill in the gaps they've left. But more often than not, you're going to be working with just a freestyle, which can kind of make doing this a lot more challenging. But if you find the same beat, you can just listen to them for a bit and then use your beat and just have a little cut. So the idea here is not to look at exactly what they're doing and just bite them. It's to really just sort of mimic how they're flowing over a beat. I often find that if you're scratching over a beat which you don't really know how to cut over yet, it can be really useful to sort of hear how a better DJ is doing it and then just see if you can implement that flow. I'm sure I'm going to get called out for saying that this is biting, but if you read the book Steal Like an Artist, it really does become apparent that all of the best artists throughout time have just stolen each other's work. Also bear in mind that it's impossible for humans to make a perfect replica of something. So even if you do try and bite or steal what they're doing, it's going to come out different anyway. Everything you do is going to go out through your own filter. If you're going to be practicing, you probably want to spend a bit of time learning some new things. I mentioned this in another video, but the quickest way to get better is to spend time in the Goldilocks zone. And that's where it's not too hard, but not too easy. I kind of interpret that to mean that you should spend a fair amount of your time pushing out of your comfort zone. And that's probably where you're going to be learning new scratches and things like that. I don't know about you, but I've normally got a little list of new scratches or combos that I can't do comfortably yet. And I either keep them by my decks in a list or just up in my head. And yeah, it's just time to practice some of those really. Learning new patterns and combos really does feel uncomfortable, especially at the start. The better you get, the easier it becomes. At this point, you often hear the advice where it's, good to start slow and slowly get quicker and quicker and until you've got like the combo or the new cut down. And I think that's really solid advice in this context. I think once you've done this for probably over a number of different scratch sessions and you can unconsciously do the cut, you do it without having to think about it. This is where it's really fun to kind of come up with your own patterns and just new ways of doing things and yeah, really distinguish your style over someone else's. Speed training. So I mentioned this before, I tend to do this by just getting different loopers with slow and faster beats. But if you're really trying to still work on your speed, you can get these loops which progressively get faster and faster, and they can be fun to play with. You can also mimic this by getting a looper which has a pitch control. Some of them have that, and you can just slowly turn it up as you get quicker and quicker. And that's another way of really helping you get faster at doing certain scratches. Another way you can push out of your comfort zone is to practice with both hands. Obviously, you don't have to do this if you don't think that it's going to be useful for you to get better with both hands, but generally it does help, especially if you're going to start learning juggling and things like that. A good way of doing this is to slap a record on each turntable and just kind of battle yourself. I've got a kind of a video idea of where I practice this for a month with my hands the wrong way around and kind of document the progress. If you'd be interested, let me know if that's something you'd want to watch, because yeah, it's a bit daunting to think that I'm going to do that and go back to sort of being a nub basically. Here are my other videos on scratching. I'll put them up here. Please go check them out. Peas and carrots.